We want trade agreements that aid development and increase prosperity, growth, and productivity at home and in our trade partner countries as well. Most trade agreements arise from a desire to liberalize trade, making it easier to sell goods and services into one another's markets. Ain't that the truth? So in today's session, we are going to talk about India and the European Free Trade Association as part of the GS syllabus, international relations, and those of you who are interested in geopolitics. One cannot be hidden, stay hidden or isolated from the world in these times of so-called globalization, liberalization, because cultures are moving across, they're spanning the countries, trade is moving, products are moving from one country to another. So in this case, the free trade agreements, now this term, this phrase, the FTAs or free trade associations or agreements, you might have come across a lot of times. But what is it exactly? So I'm here to break it down for you in this short and sweet presentation. So kindly bear with me. So first of all, we'll understand what is a free trade association. Basically, as it is written here, the region encompassing a trade bloc whose member countries have signed a free trade agreement. So free trade association, it will comprise some countries, it may be three or four or five, whatever the number, and they have signed an agreement which is called a free trade agreement. Like this icon has shown, it's a kind of a handshake or agreement, signed paper. And such agreements involve cooperation between at least two countries, like I've said, and they aim to reduce trade barriers, import quotas and tariffs, and to increase trade of goods and services with each other. So here, the important point is we are not looking at a free trade agreement or free trade association in terms of economic or monetary or trade value only. Once we sign these agreements and we enable a more free movement of goods and services across borders, then it helps sharing of culture, sharing of values, and improving the democratic relations between the countries as well. So like a lot of trade associations or agreements you might have come across, like India, UK, India, EU, European Union, India, Australia. So out of those, this EFTA, the European Free Trade Association agreement that India has decided to sign with four European countries, has held prime importance in the imminent times. Before we delve into the actual agreement, other types of associations are also important, although there are a lot of associations: common market, customs union, economic union. I'll just try to simplify things so that when you hear these terms like customs union, economic union, you don't confuse it or don't get it intertwined with the free trade agreement countries. So we have already discussed the free trade agreement. What it does, it simply reduces trade barriers, import quotas and tariffs, the custom duties, and it helps in result, consequently, because of this reduction in trade barriers, it helps to increase trade of goods and services between countries. Okay, now we go to customs union. So it is an agreement. It is a build-up or augmentation of the free trade agreement which we saw in the previous slide. So it is an agreement between member countries to trade freely with each other and impose common tariffs on non-members. Okay, so trade freely is one condition which was also there in the free trade agreement. So that is a common thing between customs union and free trade agreement, and common tariffs on non-members. So there in free trade agreement, this condition, common tariffs on non-member countries, was not a prerequisite for signing a free trade agreement, but in order to form a customs union, not only a free trade agreement needs to be obliged between the two countries, the characteristics or features have to be signed, but also the common tariffs on non-member countries. Okay, then we have the economic union, so it applies to more than just goods. Okay, so we in free trade agreement, customs union, now know the difference. Economic union is a further augmentation or build up on the customs union, so it does not only apply to goods and services unlike customs union and the free trade agreement, but it also extends to the free movement of money and workers between member countries. So I hope the definition is clear now. Recently in the news, you might have heard about the Schengen zone. Okay, so this is a group of European countries which lie in the Schengen zone. This is different from the European Union. If you have time, you can go on the net and search it. Okay, we have a paucity of time right now. Okay, now the interesting part, the mapping which I enjoy. So, can you name the countries that are part of EFTA, that is European Free Trade Association, with which India is signing the current agreement? Okay, so here we have the four countries. Now, I'm also a bit inclined towards using flags. It makes things more interesting because I can simply name the countries and you can read the countries also. But it has such some kind of visual impact which will definitely help you remembering the countries, because these questions can be easily asked in the prelims, and obviously in mains I'm going to, in subsequent slides I'm going to give you several further points to help you write a good answer. So here, this country, can anyone name this country? So this is Norway. It is a Scandinavian country, recently in news because of the NATO. Okay, so these countries we know: Norway, Sweden, and Finland. So Norway is part of EFTA. This is Iceland. So I'm also trying to incorporate some current affairs. So Iceland, just for information, Iceland, although it is known Iceland and it is full of glaciers and it is a very cold country, but it has volcanic eruptions as well. So I'm not going to go into the reasons, that belongs to the domain of geomorphology. So this Iceland is another part. This you all know. Switzerland, the honeymoon destination for couples, or favorite tourist destination. But the important thing to note, in the past year, due to severe heat waves, several ski resorts had to be shut down because of melting snow. So you now know what the climate change has impact worldwide, not only in India. And finally, this flag is of a small country known as Liechtenstein. Okay, so I'll just try to enlarge it. It will not be enlarged. So this tiny speck, the chotu sa, this country, which lies between Switzerland and Austria. So this tiny little country is known as Liechtenstein, and these four countries, I repeat again: Norway, Iceland, Switzerland, and Liechtenstein. These form the European Free Trade Association. Okay. Now I also discussed the customs union and the economic market, so it is pertinent to share some examples also, and it will make things interesting because I'm going to tell you why the means of map. So now this is the Mercosur. So actually, it is a Spanish acronym. The Spanish expansion is somewhat like Mercado Común del Sur, because if you know these South American countries, majority of these countries were ruled by the Spanish conquistadors, and majority of these countries, they belong to the Latin American nations, and they speak Spanish. Okay, so all these green countries, can you recognize these green countries? I hope you can. So this country everyone knows, Brazil. Okay, so this is Brazil. Then this is Paraguay. This is Uruguay. This is Argentina, country of Lionel Messi. Okay, Brazil, Neymar Jr. And this country is Venezuela. So can you identify, or can you tell me why, what Venezuela is famous for? It is famous for the highest waterfalls on planet Earth, that is the Angel waterfalls, okay, which lie on one of the tributaries of river Orinoco, which flows through Venezuela. So this Venezuela, why I have highlighted or shaded in red lines, because this has recently been suspended from Mercosur. Okay, it was these countries, this one, two, three, four, five countries formed the part of Mercosur, but this Venezuela was suspended. We don't need to go into the reason behind why it was suspended. And this blue part is another landlocked country in South America known as Bolivia. This Bolivia is in the in the process of accession to this Mercosur. So once the agreement has been ratified, once it has been signed between Bolivia and Mercosur, the other countries, so this Bolivia, along with these four countries, will form part of the new Mercosur. Okay, it is also known as the Southern Common Market. Okay. Then this was a type of common market. Then we have the East African Community. This is a continent of Africa, and it is a type of customs union. I just try to recollect here, just pause we don't recollect here the difference between the free trade agreement countries and the custom union. Okay, try to recollect that. Okay, so now the countries which are part of East African community, it is this country is Somalia. This is South Sudan, often in the news because you know the unrest, the civil unrest, and the between two military dictators. So that is there. Then this is the DRC, or the Democratic Republic of Congo. This country is Uganda. If you have played Atlas, so often when you were supposed to name a country with you immediately say Uganda. Okay, anyways, so this is Uganda. Then to the south of Uganda we have Rwanda. So it also has a history of genocide. If you have seen the movie Hotel Rwanda, it shows the horrific, circumstances or scenarios in which the again civil unrest or between communities, the unrest between communities took place. And this country here, this is Burundi, south of Rwanda. This country here, it is Kenya. Okay, and this country, Kenya, is one of the major producers and exporters of tea. Then this country here is Tanzania. Now, have you heard Tanzania in the news recently? Can you remember? All of you know IIT Madras or IIT Chennai. So recently it was in the news that IIT Madras has opened or inaugurated its first offshore campus. Okay, so this is an interesting fact. So this small speck, Chotusa Island, just off the coast of Tanzania, is known as Zanzibar. So this is the offshore campus of IIT Madras. Fine. So this is also an interesting bit. So this again, because a lot of questions in 2023 and 2022 prelims have been asked on the African countries, mainly because of high unrest. So you can also go online and study a term known as ECOWAS, ECOWAS. A lot of these Western African nations have been a part of this ECOWAS, and many of them have been suspended. Why? Because they could not manage their governments and fell to the wrath of coups. That is COUP. Okay, COUPS. So this country, for example, is Nigeria. This is Niger. Okay, this is Mali. So a lot of lakes have been, but a lot of prelims oriented questions have been asked. Okay. So now, significance of the deal. Now we come to a slightly boring part, but it will help you in understanding what is the need actually for the free trade agreement. So obviously now what is happening post COVID and all the problems that have been occurring between the West and China and the deterioration between relations between China and other countries, including India. So there's a reset in the global supply chain. So India has emerged one of the hotspots of investment. You might have come across this news daily in one form or the other. But the thing is, so there is a reset, and this is a great opportunity for India to harness its potential of inviting investment from other countries which were till now before the reset focusing on investing in China due to various reasons. So, like the deal, we are now talking solely about the EFTA, the European Free Trade Association Agreement with India. So, the deal brings in over $100 billion in investment over 15 years. So, we are India. What are we doing? We are not just banning or blocking the Chinese apps from intruding our privacy or trespassing our boundaries, but we also the goods and services which are the tangible assets. We want countries to invest in India because that foreign direct investment, the asset creation is more important than just business process outsourcing or the investment in the services sector. Okay, so this is very important. So joint ventures, then this is one reason. Then competition. So apart from India, don't think that only India is an attractive destination for the upcoming investments from other countries. This Vietnam is a country in Asia. So Vietnam led Association of Southeast Asian Nations or ASEAN nations and North American nations like Mexico, they are also emerging as favorable investment destinations. Okay, then high tariffs. You might have heard about the WTO peace clause. It was there in the news 1 or 2 days ago. So again, India has invoked the peace clause. So in brief, I'm going to tell you, because in domestic sense, India gives subsidies to the farmers to protect its own agricultural products, and so that there is the farmers and the general public is protected. But that does not lie well, or that is not highly acceptable by the World Trade Organization. Moreover, when we talk about trade deficit, in simple terms, the difference between exports and imports is negative. That is, imports are greater than exports. So that is due to high tariffs, high customs duty or high import duties that India imposes on other countries exporting their products to India in order to protect the domestic goods. Okay, and India runs a trade deficit with most of its top trade partners except for the US. This is just a fact in case a question comes in prelims. And this is also true in the case of the free trade agreements that India has signed in the past, especially with ASEAN nations. And while the ASEAN free trade agreement did help India secure immediate intermediate products, India's increasing average tariffs have meant that India's FTA partners have better access to the Indian market after tariff elimination. So obviously, free trade agreement, when India signs with other countries, they would also want that India lowers its tariffs. So it is not only possible across all sectors. Fine, growth and development. Whenever a free trade agreement or this investment agreement is signed between any two or more than two countries, it generates economic activity, jobs in exchange for giving market access, and it also helps develop the or augment the service sector. And in the words of our Honorable Finance Minister, Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman ji, free trade agreements are never for one sector alone, which is very true when you see this presentation. Fine. So sectors aided, India could see investment flow into pharma sector, chemical sectors, food processing, and engineering sectors. Fine. So recently, if I remember correctly, there was a news that one of the products or in the Indian market which is being imported from these European countries that was bound to get cheaper were chocolates. So yay to chocolates, right? So let's move on. So now the Swiss challenge. Okay, so we have discussed what is the significance, but of course, in order to complete the analysis, one opportunity cannot be bereft or disassociated with a challenge. So we have discussed the strengths, we have discussed the opportunities. Now we have to discuss the weaknesses and the challenges as well. So Switzerland, India's biggest trade partner among EFTA countries, decided to eliminate import duties. Okay, so the establishment of this, or this elimination of import duties, it has put pressure on India to do or reiterate the same what Switzerland has done, because Switzerland, India's industrial goods, like in the next point, industrial goods which India imports from Switzerland, it accounts for 98% of India's $1.3 billion merchandise export to Switzerland. Okay, so the if Switzerland has decided to eliminate the import duties, so it will help the India's exports to these countries. And in return, when we are signing an agreement, so the Swiss, also the other countries in the European Free Trade Association, will also want India to replicate their model. Just for information, the Swiss challenge is not just a phrase, it is also a method of which allows the bidding process. It is a type of bidding process or method which allows transparent auction and procurement of tenders from the government in a bidding way. So I'll not go into that. So, and exporting agriculture produce, like I told in the case of the WTO, it remains challenging due to the complex web of tariffs, quality standards, and approval requirements. Fine. So, to conclude, it is not only the part that India has to diversify its imports from China. Just for stats, for the sake of stats, currently India's imports of chemical products from China in FY23 alone stood at a massive $20 billion. It imported $3.4 billion worth of medical and bulk drugs. So we have talked in the previous slide about the significance. So pharma chemical sectors are bound to benefit. The Indian pharma and chemical sectors are bound to benefit from this EFTA agreement. So this is one of the significance. And also, the funds from the EFTA region include Norway's $1.6 trillion sovereign wealth fund, which is a type of pension fund. So these additional this further points, or these additional points, may help you improve upon your answer, or add substantiate or add substance to your already written answer. So this was majorly what was to be discussed about EFTA. So merchandise exports, this custom duties, this agriculture. So by icons also, I think I made it easier for you to analyze and remember these topics. Okay, so with this I will conclude today's session. If you have any doubts, you can contact me on this email, or you can send a comment, or you can also suggest any measure in which I can improve my lectures. So keep calm, keep studying, keep enriching yourself with knowledge, and so will I. Till then, Jai Hind.